to welcome everyone to attending this this session this afternoon, being presented by Jodie Ward, the title of The Value of Difference. Now, Jodie is part of the FutureBeef Project team here in Northern Australia, who aim to share the latest practical tools, scientific insights, and of course relevant timely advice to the Australian beef industry through online delivery. Now, recently she's been actively working with the Meat and Livestock Australia's Research and Development Committee to deliver professional development activities to upskill advisors within the beef industry, and recently used her extension skills to support the Queensland Government in disaster recovery and COVID activities as well. We look forward to hearing Jodie share her experiences, insights into the world of extension. So I'll hand over to Jodie.
Thank you, Graham. That was quite the generous introduction. The reason I'm here, ladies and gents, is because I was very lucky to be co-awarded the Amabel Fulton, mental blank, sorry.
Yeah, sure, right, Amabel Fulton.
Yeah, extension award at the APEN conference, and one of the opportunities that was provided to me at the time was, would you like to present some work? And I thought, well, I have recently come across a bit of a finding. I don't think it's anything different. I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary, but I would like to share it with you anyway. And what I'd like to call it is the value of difference. And it was my little dot joining journey. So I'd like to take you along with me. Now, Graham has already very kindly given FutureBeef a bit of a description, and that's exactly what it is. It is a project that's a collaboration between the Northern Territory Department of Industry, Tourism and Trade, the Western Australian Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development, MLA, of course, and the Queensland Department of Agriculture and Fisheries. And so how it all came about years and years ago was we had a lot of key information that was spread out right across the internet pretty much. And we just wanted, you know what, everyone in Northern Australia is pretty much facing the same sorts of challenges. Obviously there's regional differences, but the same sorts of challenges. And so why not just have it all in one place? Everyone put all their expertise together. And so pretty much it's the website and then a bunch of other things that draw attention to the website, like webinars and social media, e-bulletin, and of course newspaper features. And recently the team has put out a number of videos and 3 podcast episodes with the hope of doing more. So Nicole Salua, she is our project manager, and we have a number of other people on the team as well. It's not just me, I'm not taking all the credit. There's Greg Barth and Kate Brown, and of course Alice Bambling and Barney, who has also just joined the team in the Emerald office. So we are spread all throughout Queensland, and we get contributions from the other states as well as MLA. But that is our main effort, is to share all the information to one central location and to spread awareness as wide as we can. When I joined the team, it was 4 years ago when I came to Brisbane, and we did a bit of the typical team bonding experience, and we did this Myers-Briggs training. And I had actually done some Myers-Briggs type indicator training previously, like many years ago when I worked in the NT department. And I learned that I was different to everybody else, but I hadn't really taken on board what that meant. And so when I undertook this training,
we let you in,
and I discovered I was an INFJ, they said all these other wonderful, wonderful words about how I like to process information and make decisions, and I was feeling all quite happy about it and think it was great. Now, Graham, do you have that poll everywhere question for me?
Yes, I will bring it up. Want me to launch it?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Hopefully everyone will see this. Failed to launch, polling error 1. Gotta love that.
Oh, well, that's okay. Not to worry. I'm sure everyone... Oh, no, there we go.
Did it come up?
It did.
Excellent. Now we're away.
So yes, my question to our wonderful members of the audience today is, do you know your Myers-Briggs personality type indicator? Yes or no? And if so, what are the 2 middle letters for you? if you wouldn't mind. Intuitive and thinking, yep. Oh, lots of NTs. Interesting. So just for your awareness, and I'm sure you already do know, but for the others in the audience, NTs are very good at problem solving, very good at strategic planning. They have a great understanding of complex systems. If you were a producer, we'd be hitting you up to host on-farm trials, and you'll try everything future focused, which is fantastic. Wonderful.
Okay, would you like me to stop and share the results?
Yeah, sure, that would be great.
Let's go. Hopefully this happens. Another error. Let's try again. Has that come up at all?
It's okay,
It's
Graham.
showing.
I've launched it for you.
Oh, cool. Unfortunately, I can't see the results.
Okay, so the results I think I see, we have 89% of the audience, so it's eight out of 9 people have indicated that they do know their Myers-Briggs personality type, and 1 has indicated no. And in terms of middle letters, the NT, intuitive thinking, we have 6 participants who indicated that they're NTs. We've got 2 individuals have indicated their NFs, intuitive feelings. And of course, we've got 1 SJ, sensing, judging. And we've got no sensing, perceiving.
That is interesting, you know, and I'll get into why in just a second. Thank you very much, Graham. That's very helpful.
Very good, not a problem.
So, yes, when I did this INFJ, I thought, fantastic, yep, that accurately describes me. It was saying things like makes decisions with their heart, has really clear values and structures their life around their values. And if something doesn't fit with their values, it is extraordinarily uncomfortable for them. And I was like, yes, that's definitely me. Yes, yes, yes. So that was back in the NT days. And what I learned from there was that I was just different to everybody else in the room. But when I went to do it with my new team here in Queensland 4 years ago, I discovered I was the only person in my team that thinks the way that I do. So while everyone else was process driven and they're analytical and they're logical, they're controlled, have a deep sense of discipline, detailed, technical and factual, none of those words were coming up for me. And so I was like, oh great, I've landed in this team where I think differently to everybody else. And it actually felt quite, you know, I was other, I was different. And the reason why I discovered after I did, well, like we worked throughout that workshop, is because the INFJs are less than 3% of the population. Some references say that it's 1.5%, others rounded up to 2%, and I found one source that said 3%. So either way, less than 3% of the information of the population, I should say, that thinks the same way that I do. Now, just in case you're wondering, the most popular, ISFJ, so the intuitive sensing.
Yep.
Yep. Intuitive sensing, feeling, judging, 13% of the population. The extroverted version of that, so ESFJ is 12%. ISTJ, so introverted, sensing, thinking, judging. 11% of the population, blah, 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 all the way right down to the bottom, which is how I take on the world. So after discovering this, and the actual workshop facilitator came around to me and goes, you're going to struggle as an extension officer because the rest of your team are scientists. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I moved. This is fantastic. This is great. What am I going to do? And I thought, well, you know what, I might as well flip it, look at it differently and just see, you know, how those two middle parts of that 4-letter description of your personality and your thinking types. I'm like, what does this mean? And so the first letter is about how you process information. So the S's, when they are thinking about information, how they like to process information and like to be able to touch it, taste it, smell it, see it, hear it, that kind of thing. They like to be hands-on when they get information. Whereas me, I'm like, I like to think about the abstract levels and all the theories and the possible patterns in the future and all the possible possibilities of the future. Yeah, so you'll hear me take the mickey out of myself, and I don't mean that against any of the others opposing letters of the personality types, but when I think of myself being surrounded by scientists, I'm like, I'm sure this is how they see me. And then when we get to how decisions are made, of course, scientists, they're practical, they're logical, they're rational, their decisions make sense. And meanwhile, I'm using words like feel and value. And you see the scientists and they're going, but where's the facts? I'm like, well, the fact is that I feel like that's not really going to work. And so when we were having these team discussions, I was just feeling more and more and more other. So then I thought, well, what about the audience? What about the people that I'm pitching messages to? How do they like their information? And so I looked up, because I had heard it mentioned in another professional development workshop that I was fortunate enough to participate in. There was this research that was conducted by Sam Nicholson and Rod Strawn, I believe is how you pronounce the last name.
Yep, Strawn, that's correct.
Cool. And they have come up with 55% of Australian primary producers are SJs. Now, SJs are the sensing judging way of thinking. So they like their information to be consistent and reliable. They enjoy the process and the procedure, and they make decisions based on solid facts. They dislike change for change's sake. And they're very here and now. They have detail oriented and they're logical. I was like, okay, so that's just 55%. That's the blue side. Okay, that's no worries. What's the rest? The next most popular, or next most common, I should say, thinking and decision-making processes are the SPs, and they're sensing and perceiving. So they are similar in some ways to the dependables, the SJs, in that they do like detail, but are more fluid in how they actually act out that detail. They're open-minded, they're a bit impatient with theories and possibilities. They would like to know the facts. They're hardworking, they like getting it done, for example. Now, and then I was reading a newspaper article that was summarising this work by Cam and Rod, and it said, and then there's the others. Oh, goodness gracious. So the other 20%, are what they call the team builders, which is the NFs like me, and pioneers, the NTs. So the NTs will try anything. They are problem solvers, strategic planners, understand complex systems. If they're producers, we would be hitting these people up to let us host a trial on their farm, and I'll work the detail out as they go. Whereas the NFs, like myself, when you have a discussion with them, they're talking about, yes, in the future, I'm going to do this, then we're going to consider that and think about all the possibilities. We've got this soil type, but imagine what else we could do there. We're inclusive in decision-making, like empowering others, avoid conflicts, if it was me, at all costs, which follows to the next point, can also ignore problems in the hope that they will go away, and are future-focused. So again, like I was hoping to have sought some form of, finding my people when I was looking at how producers take information and would like to be communicated with in that way. And again, I was different. And I thought, oh, gee whiz, what am I going to do? But one of the things that I do in my role with FutureBeef is have a look at the results of some of our campaigns. So one of the things that I'm responsible for is sending out the e-bulletin every month. So that's our e-newsletter. And we've got nearly 8,000 subscribers there. We also have, I used to do the social media as well. That's now been handed over to Barney Daniels in Emerald, and she's doing a fantastic job. And we've got, as you can see, we've got quite a number of followers on our LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. Now, one of the things that's I've really noticed in comparison, because I've also looked at other social media accounts that belong to the department, and they have invested a lot of money in getting greater numbers of followers. So they'll do paid advertising campaigns. So they have 30, 40, 80,000 followers, depending on the account. But they've also put a lot of money into that promotion, whereas most of our followers we have gained through organic promotion. So we've done a post and then someone else has shared it and then someone else has followed us, kind of thing, as opposed to saying, follow us, we're fantastic. So while I don't want to say that we haven't bought our followers, we haven't. We did it the old school way, largely with no budget. So yes, I can't quite remember where I was going with that before I was tooting my own horn, but there we are. So something I like to do when I am putting the results for the end of month report together is to have a look at what has been the most successful, the most read articles in the e-bulletin. It's actually one of my most favourite things to do. It's just to really look at and nut out what's gone well and what hasn't. So these ones here have all gone well, as you can see, like they've been in the top, these have all been in the top 3 articles or the top 3 snippets of the newsletter per month. Excuse me. And as you can see, there's different types of mediums that have been promoted. So the videos are addressing our people who would like the visual presentation of information. Others, weather, of course, is always going to be right up there in the most read sort of information, or the most accessed information. The pasture dieback one, that also makes sense for presenting up to the minute, logical, factual information. Case studies, who doesn't like case studies? We all know these things. Graziers like to read about other graziers, which also makes sense when we're thinking about our SJ component, our dependables, the ones who like reliability, process, procedure, and local trials, and who are also risk adverse. It makes sense that they would like to see case studies. But then I'd also come across these other articles or these other snippets that just were different to the rest. You know, they weren't necessarily about the strictly only factual components of the work that was being presented. There was also this other type of other types of articles. And so I was a bit confused, and I'm hoping that you can see this top one here that presents more of a narrative, more of a storytelling way. This article is actually written by Peter Stockwell, who unfortunately no longer works for the department, and however has moved back to the Northern Territory to go back to her family property, which is fantastic for her, much of a loss for us. However, it also went extraordinarily well and far exceeded all the other articles of that e-bulletin. And it got me thinking, you know, why is it that those articles went, I should go back a slide, why is it that those articles went so well in terms of number of clicks through to the website where more information is presented, when our audience, in theory, 55% of them would like more just solid facts, just about procedures and processes, something dependable, reliable, consistent, and will work in their area. Like that doesn't really fit. And it occurred to me that all of those articles were featuring content that already existed. It was just presented differently. There was instead of just the pure facts, the hard line, this is the information you need to know, it all had a bit of a slightly different take of presenting old information that already existed. So for example, these ones with Kylie Hopkins and Mick Sullivan, the sensible supplementation webinars, that was just in the editorial. As you can see, it's not very flash, it's not very exciting, but it gives the perception, and none of the information is new. It's just information about supplementing your beef cattle in a timely manner that's going to be cost effective. So it's fundamental nutrition principles, but it's presented, this little snippet here presents the information in a way that is, people can take it when it's convenient for them, and it's reassuring them. So it's already confirming some of their biases, and hopefully that when they're watching it, listening to it, they will gain some snippets. But it's written in a friendly manner, in a non-confrontational manner. This one here I really love too. So what happened in this particular instance was on Twitter one day, somebody sent in a question about Mitchell grass dieback, and was it the same as pasture dieback on the eastern side of Queensland? And so then there was this Twitter conversation, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to literally cut and paste from the Twitter conversation and put it onto a web page, and if people want to read it, they can. And it was really well received. And what I think was really good about this one, that was really good about the Dr. Mitchell Grass, as he likes to call himself, with his conversation with Dr. Phelps, was that it was really personable. It was literally a conversation between pastoralists and scientists, just really informal, easygoing. It was fantastic. Now, this article here, written by Matthew Richardson, another excellent article, and this was also not about new information. Matt was just recycling information that had been put out a year ago. However, it was timely. The article was written for this last e-bulletin that went out in May, I think. May. And so that information was put out when people would be conducting their weaning. So it fits in with what they've got going on in the time, what's forefront in their mind, the here and now. So that kind of makes sense. But it was also written, the way that Matt's written it, was written in a way that it was a conversation, and it was, well, this is what you could do, and this is also what you could do. But if you want to actually achieve pain neutrality or no pain whatsoever, you need to do this. And so it was very, instead of saying the active component of this particular pain type does this on this amount of time, blah, 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 blah. The original article featuring the pain relief information was, no joke, this long, but Matt's managed to compile it in a way that's distilled it down to just the key information, but explained in a really conversational way. This is another one of Matt's, actually. He features here a number of times. I should let him know. But again, a very detailed topic, or what could be a very content-heavy topic. But here's the things that you need to know. And as we all do, whether we're farmers or not, sometimes we get a little bit too carried away in the details of things and the actual goings on of things, that we forget to make sure that our fundamental components are actually in line and it's going to pay off. So that was another really good article that Matt was able to write in a conversational tone. This one here, this one's from the NT, and it was published many years ago, many years ago, back when I was still in the NT, so at least like 6-7 years ago. And it was re-released, or re-promoted at least, only last year when they had a failed wet season. So this was a fantastic opportunity to recycle an old publication and hopefully bring people up to speed and think, well, how do your stocking rates compare? So an analysis can be made when they're in a very non-confrontational manner. Like, there was no one else can see that you're double checking yourself. No one else knows this. It's all very private and personal. Another one of Matt Richardson's, actually. And this was using a report that had already been published maybe a year before, where Matt was just encouraging people to just do the economics on your on your age of 12 months for an substantially increased. Well, absolutely loved it. And to be honest, I nearly didn't run it. I nearly didn't run it in the e-bulletin.
Sorry, Jodie.
Graham
here, Jodie, just cutting in. We just lost you there for a little bit with the connectivity. Did you want to just repeat that? No, it's not your fault. I'm just wondering if we might turn off our videos might assist maybe. Okay, I'll just stop my video. And I think, yeah, okay, Jodie, you go ahead, sorry.
No, all good. I was just saying with Peter's article, it just reads absolutely beautifully, I think, and just starts telling the story so that the people who are reading it can really immerse themselves. They can smell the yards. They can smell, you know, that smell of manure in the yards when it's fresh and the heifers have been held overnight. And you can almost feel the dust in your hands and in your hair. How she has written it really does immerse you right into that situation. And when you think about it, a lot of these things, a lot of the features of these articles on the screen here right now are not in line with how you would think SJs and SPs, making up 80% of the Australian primary producers' way of thinking and making decisions. It doesn't align. It doesn't necessarily align. You're like, why? I was considering, why is this? Why? How does this work? And then it occurred to me that it's a spectrum, isn't it? Whenever we're talking about personality types and indicators, you think about it's really unlikely that someone is going to be at one decisive end of the scale in comparison to another. You're going to be somewhere in the middle. It's a whole scale of things. For example, when it comes to introversion and extroversion, I'm a bit over the border into that introversion side, and yet at times, like now, I can be an extrovert and really get enthusiastic about sharing my insights and wanting to have people around me and sharing this information. When it comes to how I like information, it's much like that. I have a very strong IF way of thinking. I've messed up the order of that, my apologies. But as you can see, the main point of all this is that the whole thing is a spectrum. Although we say that our beef producers, 55% of them, are on that sensing, judging, personality, Myers-Briggs type indicator. So they like the solid facts, processes, reliability, etc. And we have the other 25%, which don't like the unnecessary information. They don't like the fluff. They like decisive, tactical, here and now, problem-solving type information. They're all going to be on a scale, aren't they? They're all going to be somewhere in between either end of those two letters. So what I think is that there is value in difference. Now, bear with me. What I've presented here today isn't anything new. There's no new research. There's no new findings. There's no new strategies, procedures, or recommendations. What I hope to have presented to you and with you here today is cause for you to reconsider any hesitation you may experience from this point forward when it comes to sharing content. You don't need new information to reach out to your clients. You don't need new resources. You don't need new results, I should say. You don't need to recreate the wheel. You can share what is timely and relevant to your clients when they need to hear it, using existing resources. Just find a different way to present it, for there is value in difference. And
Very
that's
good.
it, Graham.
Very good, Jodie. Am I muted? Oh no, I am clear. Very good, Jodie. Thank you very much for that. And I think that's excellent presentation around some of the things about difference. Got a few claps coming in there from people. We'll try with the try turning our videos back on again. We'll see if that works for us. I actually do have, there is at least one question which I will bring back up, so bear with me. Early on in your presentation, there was a question in regards to those figures around farmers from Rod Strawn's and Cam Parker's work, and I'll bring chat up. Here it is here. So the question here was from Greg Duncan, is that all farms across all industries? So Jodie, can you just recollect on what industry they were working on there?
I believe it was, but I could double check that.
Yeah, sure. So that was just a question there as well too.
Sorry there, Greg.
That's no worries. I have a question. Well, I guess it might be a statement rather than a question, but I guess I'm just curious. When you were presenting some of those items from your posts and the different engagement getting, I was wondering whether, I'm be interested in your thoughts. I was wondering whether, is it because we're connecting more with our clients with actual stories about things that they can actually directly relate to themselves? Is that part of it? Is this about relationships more than probably anything else? Is that part of what's going on there? I'm open to your thoughts.
I think it is. I think it is, Graham. I think that it is, even if we don't potentially speak on behalf of a person who works in a department, for example. So there are a lot of extension officers who can be on ground, but I think that it's being able to make someone feel comfortable enough so that you can speak to them about factual information, but in a non-formal manner. And then it sort of, that trust, it builds trust, in my opinion.
Yeah, trust. Yeah, or trust and rapport. That's actually just completed a course that John James has actually run around trust and rapport, which I'd recommend to everybody if they have an opportunity to do that. It's an excellent course. There was about half a dozen of us undertaking that, and we're really really interested in that course actually, and I think it'd be worth people having a bit of a look at some stage. Now, we are open the floor for other questions, so I'll try not to take over everything. So if you've got a question, would you like to just turn your mute off and ask the question? I look forward to any questions that come from the floor. Pat.
Hi, Jodie. I really enjoyed that very much. I did write in the chat right at the beginning when you were talking about personalities. I've found that I have done the Myers-Briggs 5 times in my life.
Wow.
At over different ages, and I get a different result each time.
I have heard that, yes. The last workshop that I went to, where we were speaking about actually only a few weeks ago, was saying, that gentleman did say, yes, it can change, particularly if you've had a major growth point in your life. The example he used in my case was where after my dad had died, and we had to do sell the family farm, and then there was a bit of conflict, and so while my letters still stayed the same, there was quite a bit of movement within there. So that was the example he used with me, Pat.
Yes, I agree, and that's what's happened to me over my lifetime. You know, there's been tragedy, or there's been high elation, you know, all of that. And so if you're attending a particular group that decides to do this, it is how you perceive, and it's often too what you think you are rather than often what you really are, or how others perceive you. And it'd be really interesting for somebody to do a Myers-Briggs test on me, then perhaps I wouldn't know my true self. But thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Pat.
It's interesting, Pat. I in fact, before this session today, I was actually asked by one of my team members that I lead. He undertook some training last week where he actually did a Myers-Briggs analysis. And he asked me what mine was, and I thought, oh, that's a good question. I know I've done one. I'll need to go back and find my files. And then Jodie, before we met, showed that. And I said, oh, what is mine? I said, oh, I've got to find those files. So I have found it. And I agree that I don't think I've changed, but I think you do shift a little bit within your areas from time to time based on past experiences. And I like your comment that if there's been a particular event or series of events that actually have impacted you, that may well be affecting you to some extent as well. So I can see that. I definitely can see that. Mm. Have we got other questions? Anybody there, or do I start picking on people? Greg. Yes,
Greg again. I was really interested, and the reason why I asked the question was I was interested to know if there's any cultural norms across industry. So I work in a national role in dairy, and I'm particularly interested as to how this relates to us. But I don't often look outside of the dairy industry, but I'm just wondering if, horticulture, beef, sheep, northern beef, so forth, has something cultural that influences that process. But anyway, it might
it's
be
a good
on the
question.
fringes.
That's a good question. I'd be keen to hear if there's others that have seen these sorts of studies in their industries at all, or whether they've actually seen anything different. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't some differences.
Graham, can I just interrupt there, because
Yes.
I think it's the beef and lamb. We've got New Zealanders sitting here too. That we could find what are the cultural differences between what you said, Jodie, and what has been applied in New Zealand. Sorry, Denise, for
That's a segue to Denise Beautiful. Sorry, Denise. That's where I was headed. Pat.
Well, I think it is tied up in some of that, who you trust and the relationships you develop and that kind of thing. And one of the things we found with action groups was that having the chance to build trust with an expert, an outside person in a safe environment like a group, so you're with your peers, you could, it was a safe environment, allowed you to then start I guess you were realizing that information was helpful and useful, and so they become trusted. And so then I can imagine that your filter then becomes, oh, you see an article about that, or something, you go, oh, click, I know them and I trust them, and so off you go, and it kind of becomes one of your nice filters.
Something that it's slightly off topic, sorry, Denise, but very much in line with what you were saying is I try and think about the marketing process of seven touches, and wherever we've got something that you can use content in more than one way, and share it in more than one way, the better, just to get that reinforcement happening wherever possible.
Oh, sorry. I was actually going to say that was what struck me too. It was exactly that same thing, and I was wondering, because it was really neat evaluation being able to follow all of that. Have you kind of looked and seen if there is any of those patterns? Oh, if we keep on mentioning this, it does get better, or different ways, or that kind of thing. So
funny you say that. We have these. I'm sure most people with social media accounts probably do this, but we had only really started investing in Evergreen Posts, so posts that are relevant at different times of the year. You just recycle them. And they seem to get stronger and stronger every year, where you think, so as a person who sees it all the time, I think we ran this last year, but it's on point, nothing new's changed. They still get picked up really well every year. And so where I'd be thinking we'd be getting a bit of engagement fatigue and content fatigue, it still works. Greg, I've just had a realization, my apologies for not thinking of it. I'm introvert, don't think and speak well at the same time.
No, you're right.
I remember when I was doing my research, I remember seeing that there was, in America, primary producers, and I can't remember the details, so I'm sure I could find it and send it to you. There was more extroverted primary producers than introverted, which is the case in Australia.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's worth probably investigating that, because Denise reads a lot of extension materials, and this gives you something else to follow up, Denise, for our next.
It's true. I'm just
newsletter.
making a note, Graham, for enablers of change. Excellent.
Oh, enablers of change would be excellent. Actually, I can see an article there. Yeah,
absolutely.
I hope everyone's subscribed to enablers of change. There's a segue for those of you that aren't.
We definitely owe you chocolate, Graham.
Search for it on Google. Enablers of Change. It's well worth getting the posts every week. Have we got any other questions? Janelle Montgomery, I'll pick on you now. Cotton industry. Any thoughts? Have you seen any studies in the cotton industry around in this space? I can't think of any directly myself, or just your general thoughts about it, because it's a fairly unique industry in many respects, and highly integrated with extension and research, even more so than compared to other industries. Have you got any thoughts about it?
Well, I think our advantage is that we're a small industry compared to livestock or grains, and there's only 1,000, 1,500 growers, I guess, in Australia, and so it's and that makes it easier to some extent to to work with, but there is also a lot of support. I think if you put a ratio from growers to industry support, it's pretty high in the cotton industry. Within a valley, there's probably there's probably 3 or 4 sort of industry type support people, and then you've got all their consultants as well. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed your talk, Jodie, and I've got a few different notes here because it's interesting because I've sort of been working cotton a little while now, and we do sort of revamp bits and pieces, and that storytelling, I guess, is something that is starting to come to the forefront a little bit more these days, and it's a good way to go.
And it seems to be storytelling that involves a producer experience, even if you can get them just to give like a 1 paragraph quote. So that might be 3 sentences where you can say that such and such did such and such and found such and such. Seems to be a lot stronger than just an extension officer telling the story.
No, that's right.
Very good. Thanks for that, Janelle. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I knew you'd have something to say about it.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah, no, it certainly is an interesting industry, cotton, and the support networks are really, really good there. And I was really impressed because I've worked in it for a bit too. I'm really impressed with the way in which the sharing of information and support occurs from grower to grower, valley to valley, is very strong as well too. Have we?
Graham,
sorry,
we've
yes,
got
Pat.
Fishing industry here with us today.
Fishing industry, have we? Did I miss them? Oh, my apologies. I'm only seeing a small screen here at the moment. Yes, we do have, we have Northern Territory there. Hello, Michael. Who's from the fishing industry? Sorry, Pat.
No, I thought I read Michael, but I had written it down correctly. Sorry.
You're right. It's a different Michael. No, Michael's got all plant industries in Northern Territory. Yeah, actually, I'll put it to you, Michael. I don't want to put too much, but you've worked across. I mean, you've come from private sector, and you're also working in the government sector now. But you're working across horticulture, grazing, and broadacre cropping. And I'd be curious to see your thoughts about what you see amongst growers and how they sort of interact. What's your perspective?
Thanks for asking the question, Graham, and thanks, Jodie. There's some really good information in there. So it varies. Like I said, it's a spectrum. I still think a lot of our growers love face-to-face interaction. That seems to be it's always a popular choice because it's a human connection. We want to, discuss something of mutual interest with somebody face to face and enjoy the conversation. And it's interesting you say about social media because we are just kind of really starting to kind of get on the social media and try and promote some of our research and extension as well to different sectors. My observation on that in terms of how people like information, it also seems to depend on, I suppose, their business age, like where they are up to in their business. Like there are some, for example, mango growers that their business has been taken over by their second generation and that they're interested in social media or want research through social media. But then other businesses on a different spectrum where they're just like, look, I'm comfortable with what I've been doing for a number of years. So I'm happy to just catch up and have a discussion on the latest research, but I'm probably not going to go to social media to chase new research. So my observation across a few different sectors is that it depends where they are on their business journey or spectrum, I suppose.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Look, Jodie, we might pull this to a close. We're going 45 minutes, but I actually have the last say. If you'd like to sort of make some comment to pull it all together for us, and I would like to, before you do that, thank you for your presentation. I know I was involved in the panel that was assessing your application, and we were very impressed with the feedback we had from industry and from your peers on your work and the work that you've been doing, and yeah, much appreciative of your time today in presenting. So Jodie, if you'd like to just take it away to finish off.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for the opportunity, Graham. I really do appreciate it, and I don't see that anything that I've done is any different to the rest of the team, but I think that it's more of a team award than me, and that sounds very cliche and ridiculous when I say it out loud, but it's true. And I think this whole exercise and this self-reflection has definitely led me to reconsider when I feel like I'm getting stuck for content, and just being able to think differently, and maybe when I get my writer's block and feel like I've got nothing to